Hey, my name's Cory, and I'm here to talk about movies and stuff. For years, I refused to get internet or cable. I had a smartphone for my news and my internet needs, but I refused to subscribe to any streaming services or any, TV service. So I started to collect DVDs. I should say that most of the films in my collection I got in the $5 bin or at the pawn shop, wherever you get movies the cheapest. I bought a bunch when my local Blockbuster closed down. I also bought the Open Sign, which hung in my own shop for 5 years. I have a collection of Laserdiscs as well. I love them for movies that are of a certain age, and I like the way that they look. I like them for the extra content that they have. I could talk about Laserdiscs for days, but that's, a video or 5 in their own right. So, stay tuned for that. Anyway, I do find enjoyments in all kinds of movies. I should say that many of the movies in my collection are classics, and many more are crap. So over the course of 10 years, I've collected between 500 and 1,000. I really have no idea. And I just, I love the movies. I spent a lot of time watching them. I love reading about them. I love watching them. And I love talking about them. So, I'm trapped inside like everybody else, and I've already watched these movies so many times. I don't need to watch The Shawshank Redemption again for the umpteenth time. I know how it ends. So I've decided to share my thoughts about my own personal collection with you during this time. So please enjoy, and hopefully we'll be bringing you fresh content close to daily basis. So I don't have a system for which movies I'm going to be talking about. So you'll be getting a grab bag of good, bad, happy, sad. Most likely I'll be moving from, the left side of my bookshelf to the right side. I think that's the fairest way. Don't judge me on my selection, and also don't judge me on my collection. So let's have fun. We'll talk about some movies. And that being said, what do you think should be my first movie? Well, I've made it easy for you. I know I said there was no rhyme or reason for picking my movies, but I'm choosing the first one for a few specific reasons. First of all, it's one of my all-time favorites. Probably one of the best movies ever made. My personal opinion. Second, it's depressingly relevant for the day. It asks the question, what if we could go back in time and stop the virus from happening? It was nominated for Oscars. It blew my mind when I saw it in the theaters back when I was in high school. It stars Bruce Willis, Brad Pitt, Madeline Stowe, and it's a time travel movie from the 90s. It is called 12 Monkeys. For those of you who are unfamiliar with the film, here's a brief and oversimplified explanation of the plot. I figure since the movie came out over 20 years ago, it's okay to include spoilers. You've been warned. This movie has many twists and turns. If you don't want them ruined, maybe sit this one out and wait for the next video. It'll be coming very shortly. It starts out in the future. Philadelphia is a snow-covered, empty city, except for the wild bears, lions, giraffes, and other animals that seem to roam freely. Bruce Willis plays a character named James Cole. He's kept as a prisoner underground. That's where humanity, what's left of humanity, lives. So in the late 90s, a virus wiped out almost everybody on Earth. The survivors were forced underground until the surface is safe again. But they've invented a time machine, and they've been sending prisoners, volunteers, back in time to try to find the source of the virus. So James Cole is volunteered, and he gets sent back in time to the early 90s, where he's mistaken for a crazy person and put in an insane asylum. That's where he meets Madeline Stowe's character. She plays a psychologist, and he also meets Brad Pitt, who plays the character Jeffrey Goins, who's an inpatient at the insane asylum. But it's the wrong year. And so after a really cool escape, Bruce Willis gets sent back to the future. The psychologist has no idea what happened, called it a Houdini act, and everybody is totally dumbfounded, right? He gets back to the future. They debrief him about life in the 90s. They find out that he was sent to the wrong year, so they send him back to the correct year. And this time, the psychologist is a famous author, and James Cole kidnaps her and Baltimore and takes her up to Philly to find out about the Army of the 12 Monkeys. That's because they left graffiti everywhere saying they did it. So what is the Army of the 12 Monkeys? It's a pseudo-militia animal rights group headed by Jeffrey Goins, Brad Pitt's character, whose father just happens to be a famous virologist. So Bruce Willis and Madeline Stowe, they track down the Army of the 12 Monkeys, and they find out that their mission is actually just to free the animals in the zoo. It's actually one of the guys that works for Jeffrey Goins' father, who has a doomsday thing, and he creates the virus, deliberately engineering it to wipe out humanity. So some thrilling chases happen and fights happen, and the movie hits you in the face with this crazy twist, time travel paradox feedback loop that really makes you scratch your head and ask a lot of questions. I love this movie. It was executed brilliantly. It was directed by Terry Gilliam, who's a genius when he's at his best, which isn't often enough, sadly. This movie oozes with his signature style. Lots of Dutch angles, slick camera moves, multiple lenses, and screens and steampunk junk throughout. Dramatic scenery, impressive sets, He gets great performances out of his leads. A career acting highlight for Bruce Willis, if you ask me. He really owns the role. I believe it unquestionably. An Oscar-nominated turn by Brad Pitt, who hadn't blown up at the time when he was cast, so he was a little bit free to play this totally unhinged, borderline personality and he acts the shit out of the part. So Brad Pitt won a fan in me when I saw that performance. And Madeline Stowe, who I haven't seen in a whole lot else, but she did an excellent job playing a psychologist who's conflicted between dismissing her patient as insane, but also believing his insane story of time travel and doom. So the great Christopher Plummer is in it as well. He plays the famous virologist, and he's always good as a slightly creepy older man. And David Morse plays the doctor who ends up engineering the virus and releasing it. Just a little aside, whenever I see him in a movie, I name drop him because I met him in 2004, and that's kind of cool to me. So the time travel part of the movie is handled as good as it is in any movie. The rules make sense, and it doesn't really create paradoxes. In the end, I feel like the story is destined to repeat itself, and it'll always happen the way that it happened. So can't change the way that it happened. Now, although it's a little bit ambiguous and open to interpretation, it does have a very satisfying end. The dream that Bruce Willis has throughout the movie serves as a connection between the past and the present, and in the end you find out that he actually witnessed himself die when he was a child, and the dream that he was having was actually a memory of, the climax of the movie. So, yeah, that's pretty cool. The psychologist also wrote a book about what she calls the Cassandra Complex, about people from history who claim to be from the future. And when she discovers James Cole, Bruce Willis's character, in a photo from World War I, that's when she starts to actually believe that maybe James Cole is in fact a time traveler and maybe not insane. So the script is very cleverly written. All the plot threads are consistent throughout the film and are woven together to create a very interesting and dynamic movie. The Army of the 12 Monkeys is a perfect red herring, and when the twist is revealed, the rest of the film starts to make a lot more sense. So the wild animals roaming Philly in the future are because 12 monkeys liberated the zoo and not releasing the deadly virus, right? So this is a film that's worthy of several viewings. There are details and subtle cues throughout that make it a joy to unwrap. A few other films that I can think of do it to a similar effect. Off the top of my head, The Usual Suspects, The Sixth Sense, The Game, Fight Club, The Prestige, and Memento. Chris Nolan likes to do it. Those are some that have compelling twists that are clues scattered all throughout for you to figure out. So recommend those movies too. And I forgot the music. So, inspired by Tango Master Astor Piazzolla, and perfectly accompanying this film for a particular stylistic tone with matching dissonant, syncopated tango jams. So, the music, although tango's on a bandoneon in this film, as well as Amelie, music by Jan Tiersen, another great composer, inspired me to actually learn the accordion. And I still can't play tango to save my life, but I can play the theme for Amelie. So the movie, as an apocalypse film, is quite relevant, right? In the film, the virus was created in a lab and was released in busy airports around the world. And the virus might have been more deadly than the coronavirus, but it spreads the same way that we're seeing in real life. So travelers spread the virus to all the continents very quickly through international travel. And before they show symptoms, it's already spread to more people. Let's hope that we can contain the situation before society is forced to live underground because we've ruined the surface. I'm a Terry Gilliam fan. I grew up with Monty Python. His best films, Brazil, Baron Munchausen, which is my personal favorite, as well as probably the best fantasy made in the pre-digital age, Fisher King, Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, and this one are all superbly crafted, in my opinion. So his films are also notoriously plagued with money problems, production problems, disorganized sets. It seems like a miracle whenever one of his films gets finished, and yet during his heyday in the mid-'80s and '90s, he was crafting some of the most innovative and visually compelling movies that he seemed to complete by the seat of his pants. So he has yet to truly return to form, having maybe come close with Heath Ledger's The Imaginarium and Dr. Parnassus, but that movie seemed to be compromised as they tried to finish it after Ledger's death. And honestly, I haven't seen his last couple of movies. They're hard to find, and they weren't released near me in the theaters, unfortunately. So, one day. So, in summary, you should watch this movie if you don't mind a little dystopian sci-fi getting in the way of a compelling story with well-drawn characters and impeccable art direction. It can be a little bleak, but it's always interesting. So, that's my 2 cents. I hope you enjoyed it, and stay tuned for the next video. If you like it, please subscribe below, and don't forget to leave comments if you agree, disagree, or just have some wild, crazy fan theories that you'd like to tell me about. Happy to hear about it. Take care. Next time.